This is just a short refresher on the responsible thinking process. At the centre of the philosophy of RTP is teachers have the right to teach and students have the right to learn. No student has the right to disrupt the class, and a disruption is anything that means that the teacher has to stop teaching and deal with the student behaviour. This could be a student talking while the teacher is talking or moving around the classroom without permission. It's also important to understand what a disruption isn't. So a disruption is not about the amount of work completed in a class, not completing homework or turning up late to class. These behaviours need to be managed outside of the RTP process. When a student disrupts, the teacher will ask the following questions. So the first set of RTP questions are, what are you doing? What should you be doing? What happens when you disrupt? Is that what you want to do? And what are you going to do now? And basically, if a student had been talking, then it's quite simple. What are you doing? I was talking. What should you be doing? I should be listening. What happens when you disrupt? I go to RTP. Is that what you want to do? Well, no. What do you want to do now? I want to continue on with my work. So they're the general responses. If a student has gone through that process and then, let's say 10 minutes later, they again disrupt the class, then there is a second round of questions. Now that effectively isn't another chance, it's actually just identifying that they are going to the responsible thinking classroom. So the second set of questions are, what are you doing? What did you say would happen if you disrupted again? What do you need to do now? And the answers to those questions are, what are you doing? Well, I got up out of my seat without permission. What did you say would happen if you disrupted again? I would go to RTP. So the student should actually not have to be told to go to RTP. They should simply pack up their equipment and stuff and go. You might need to tell them that they need to go to the responsible thinking classroom. There is another set of questions if a student is on a plan, and they are, what are you doing? What does your plan say about that? Do you need and go and work on your plan again? And what happens if you disrupt again? So effectively, if they're on a plan, then yes, they're still asked the first question, but the second question is about, do you want to work on your plan? Which identifies to them that clearly their plan isn't necessarily working. So if they argue or refuse to go, now students should answer the questions politely in the same way that teachers need to ask the questions calmly. So if you ask, what are you doing? And when the student was talking and they say nothing or they don't reply at all, you repeat the question. If they continue to argue and not reply, then simply you ask them, do you want to work with me? If they say no, if they argue or they don't reply, then they're choosing to go to the RTP. If they refuse to go to the RTP, contact the RTP room 8225, and we will try and come and collect the student, or give Mrs. Austin Campbell a call and the student will be collected as well. So if they swear or they're abusive, in addition to going to the RTP, you need to notify the house coordinator and carbon copy me as well. This process works best when you embed it into your classroom management procedures. It's not just a procedure, it should actually be a philosophy. Now, I understand how difficult, disruptive, and disrespectful behaviour can be. I understand how frustrating it can be, but it's really important that you use the process, and the process centres around asking the questions. Now, the only time you wouldn't send a kid to RTP, if you haven't asked the questions, is if there is a significant safety issue. And that will probably be about the only time you wouldn't ask the questions. But again, I'd like to make sure that you understand it is a philosophy and it should be part of your general teaching toolbox. So filling out the referral form. It's important that the form is available. I send it around every couple of months, but I also have it on SEER. The form can be filled out electronically. It doesn't take very long, but it's important that if you can, to add as much detail as possible. And then email it to #RTP. It's also important that you make time available and you simply don't expect that the student is to see you either before or after school. You need to make sure that you make either lunch or afternoon tea available and in significant amounts of time so that you can show the student that you are willing and wanting to negotiate a successful outcome. Effectively, it's the teacher who negotiates the re-entry of the student into the classroom. The writing of the student plan takes time and effort, both from the student and from the RTP teacher, and it's important that the classroom teacher sits down with the student and negotiates the plan. A minimum expectation would be 5 minutes. The teacher has the right to ask for changes in the plan. However, these changes should be negotiated, not demanded. The RTP process is not punitive. If a plan is not successfully negotiated, the student returns to the RTP room. At the heart of negotiating is about restoring the relationship between the teacher and the student. It is an opportunity to build relationship and trust. So this basically gives you a quick rundown on the RTP process. At any time, feel free to come and have a chat. Many of the students that we get in RTP are frequent flyers, students that have been through the process a number of times. Feel free to ask me about any student. Feel free to ask me about the process. And if you've got any further questions, come and have a chat or send me an email. But thanks for listening.